Good afternoon to all, respected dignitaries on dais, ladies and gentlemen. I, on behalf of Terry, welcome you for our thematic track, Disruption and Transformation, Innovations in the Cooling Sector. It's a great pleasure for me to have you all amidst at our WSD International Summit to discuss on one of the key sector, the cooling and the refrigeration. Reciting to the recent findings, 2018 was recorded as the fourth hottest year since 1950. Rising temperatures has caused adverse effect on humans across the globe. Providing optimum cooling is a very significant for better health, productivity, and development. Today, we are going to launch our pilot platform program supported by our partners, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, NRDC, and Honeywell India. The program intends to identify the techno-economic pilotable ideas, customizing Indian conditions. Now, we would like to start the event by launching our platform, and now I request all the dignitaries to launch this platform. So we are doing this by a presentation. Respected dignitaries, we would also like to request you to release two of our publications, the News-TRAC, which is for the servicing sector personnel, and also a policy brief document on bulk procurement in room ACs, which was supported by Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. Yeah, so please stand. Now, we would request Mr. Rashmi, Distinguished Fellow Terry, for his opening remarks. So,
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon to all of you. And thanks for making your time here. We have today, we are going to discuss the issues around cooling. And I'm thankful to all of you for being here present at the launch of this platform. This is an innovative idea to get everyone together for the purpose of enhancing the cooling initiatives in India. And of course, we need the cooperation of everyone, the government, the industry, the think tanks, the leaders in innovation, and of course the other stakeholders, including the people who are outside the range of the industry. And in this, I am, on behalf of Terry, I am really thankful for we have received the active support and cooperation of Shakti Foundation, NRDC, and Honeywell in doing this and moving this exercise and making it possible. So to discuss the issues around the cooling strategy in India and in the context of the global goal for reaching, bring down the HFCs, the and moving towards some more sustainable solutions. We have a very interesting panel here. Mr. Abhay Bhakre, who is from the Indian Railways and currently the DG of Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Mr. Darwood Sailk, who is founder of the Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development in Washington, and is a well-known figure in the field of law. Jack Schmidt, he is from the NRDC, and he handles represents the team of experts and partners who are working with us on this. The Honeywell, of course, you all know them. Mr. Dhawan from Shakti Foundation, and Mr. last but not the least, but Mr. Amit Love, who represents the Government of India, and he is the nodal point for the ozone cell, which manages the issues of cooling as part of the national cooling strategy. So we are fortunate in having this large and distinguished panel. So I'll request, since we have just 1 hour with us, we have short time, and we would like to have the benefit of the advice of the stakeholders and people around the table here. I'll request each panelist to make an intervention, short intervention in 3 to 4 minutes, and then we can open the discussions to the entire house. So first of all, let me invite Mr. Bhakre.
Thank you, sir. My fellow panelists, experts, delegates, and ladies and gentlemen. This important event, WSDS, is not complete unless there is a detailed discussion on the topic of cooling, and especially the kind of activity we are witnessing last 1.5 years on the cooling side. The participation, the inputs from all the stakeholders, partners, is very much vital in shaping up the future of cooling in the country, and perhaps not only in the country, perhaps even outside the country or in the across the world. All of you are aware about the India Cooling Action Plan, the detailed discussion. My colleague Dr. Amit Love is also the nodal official for that, and the Ministry of Environment, which has taken a very great step in developing such a visionary document, which in real sense not only is giving direction towards the policies, but sir, I believe that the document ICAP is also giving so many clues to different stakeholders, the kind of research, the kind of implementation on the field, the development of new initiatives, the instruments, including a competition among the vendors for going towards more and more efficient appliances. Now, on behalf of Bureau, I may like to say that the main concern was about the total energy demand, which we are able to estimate by 2030. So with this background, we wanted to have the assessment. We had a very useful study conducted by AEEE, followed by there was an overall estimation by IEA, and all of them have suggested that the current pattern where the industry is the largest energy consuming sector, we are likely to shift towards buildings, both commercial and domestic put together, as the highest sector by 2030, surpassing the industry. That's a great thing. Now, the reasons which we tried to analyze on behalf of Bureau was that the industry is already on the energy efficiency path, perhaps much matured as per the IEA estimation. But the buildings which are, most of them are yet to come up, and we always talk about the 1 billion square meter of construction envisaged in next 10 to 12 years, apart from the the penetration of air conditioning appliances, whether it is at the household level or whether it's at the official or the commercial standards, will be huge, and it will not be as per today's level of somewhere 6 to 8%. Even it will perhaps reach to 25 to 30%. There was an estimation that what China witnessed when they started this development and large-scale construction, their penetration of air conditioning raised from somewhere 10 to 12% to immediately to 55 to 60%, putting huge demand on the not only the air conditioning systems, appliances, but as well as on the electricity demand. Now we are also going to face the same thing. In a way, it's good that the market will mature, the economy will develop, but then the energy demand, even though there is counter strategy to provide the sufficient energy, sufficient electricity, preferably through renewables, but then there will be a case that if there is the demand is not managed properly, there could be a shortage of supply, and any kind of shortage of supply, especially on the energy or the electricity side, is going to affect the economical growth. And the major impact will be on the industry side. So in that process, Ministry of Power, in fact, has taken this as a very serious matter, even though cooling being mostly a demand side issue, but the Ministry of Power is keenly watching. They have given priority to launch the chiller energy efficiency program, and even the Honorable Minister also wanted to have many more initiatives, like he is keen to have the 24-degree or optimal setting. 24 is just the number which we try to, but the idea is that the behavioral change has to occur about the definition of cooling. Then the ministry is very particular to take up with the building design itself to address the cooling load and other parameters. So in that manner, from the government perspective, the demand in energy for the cooling sector, which is expected to raise almost threefold, somewhere from 120 gigawatt to 390 gigawatt, is expected to be mitigated if we are able to properly implement most of the instruments in the cooling action plan, as well as take concerted efforts, and perhaps the estimation is between 80 to 100 gigawatt can be mitigated at max if we take necessary action. We have all the partners in this room, and this is, even though it's a small gathering, but I believe each one has experts giving all the views. One last thing which I wanted to inform about, and the word innovative cooling. The parallel forum, which is Mission Innovation and Department of Science and Technology, they have also taken keen interest, and not only the India, even other countries, to come out with the innovative solution as part of the Mission Innovation. So Bureau and DST are partnering with few more initiatives on R&D, as well as then scaling up in the cooling sector in coming years. So thank you, Terry, for inviting me, and I look forward to have your inputs on this important topic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bhakre, for outlining some of the key steps which Bureau has taken, and the areas which Bureau is focusing on to improve the energy efficiency scenarios as far as the cooling sector is concerned. He mentioned some of the steps which are a part of the National Cooling Plan. We will get to hear more when we listen to Dr. Amit Love on this. But thank you very much for outlining and presenting the potential, that there is a large potential, and it's important for everyone to realize that we all need to move towards that, and industry is a key stakeholder in that process. So we need to watch these developments, and it will succeed only if we have the fullest support of the industry. Now, before we move on and request other speakers to come in, I'll request my colleague Karan Malhotra, who is the nodal point for the cooling actions in TERI. I'll request him to make a presentation, a short presentation on the platform which we have just launched, the platform for innovative cooling strategies in India, and how we want to go about this. So, Karan, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Let me start by welcoming all of you, and thank you very much to come out here in large numbers. We all know that last year was a very interesting and I would say full of achievements kind of a year in terms of cooling initiatives in India. We had the draft launch of the Cooling Action Plan, and we were all involved. It was a very cohesive, stakeholder-driven thing. So moving on from that, one of the things that was coming out as one of a critical challenge was that, while there is a big push towards start to piloting global innovative cooling solutions to customized customized to Indian conditions, there was no kind of a platform where different stakeholders were coming in and financial or bankability of these projects were seen that could be taken up as eventual pilots. So with this in mind, I'll quickly take you through the things that we have envisaged. It's also work in progress, and you will start to receive updates as we go ahead. I would not spend a lot of time on this. I think we are all very aware of the fact that India is still a very small contributor, or in the ownership of air conditioners in India is pretty low. The recent IEA report on the future of cooling very clearly stated that 2.8 billion people living in the hottest places, so between the tropics, but only 8% possess room air conditioners. It also has a huge impact on the greenhouse gases that come out of it directly or indirectly. Power consumption, has a space cooling sector in 2016 at 2,000, just above 2,000 terawatt hours per year, as power consumption figures. And you hear in the morning also in the inaugural, it was mentioned that India still has a very, very low per capita consumption. And if we have to not emulate some of the other countries which are very, very high, we need to, start to bend that curve at this time. That's also a great opportunity. India, Indonesia, and China will be almost about 50% of the total cooling load, with India and China roughly using around 2 billion air conditioners, and emission numbers which are very, very high from only the cooling part, and these include both direct and indirect emissions from electricity usage as well. So the need, as I was highlighting, there was a lack of an institutional platform that would provide techno-economic feasible options that could be piloted or customized to the cooling sector in our country. So while this platform will invite global innovative ideas, but the intent is to see how they can be customized to Indian conditions. There are three objectives: to identify the feasible techno-economic options, identify financial viability for piloting these options, and to carry out policy analysis pertaining to the cooling sector in India. We will divide it into three parts. We have a core group, and some of you have started to get invitations to join part of our core group. TERI would manage the secretariat, and we can have co-opted members based on the proposals we are discussing at that time. We will have a technical evaluation committee, which will be technology agnostic and will provide inputs to whether and what works for India. And then after that, we have a financial feasibility assessment committee. We cannot run this without, the constant support of our partners, ranging from associations. I see Mr. Mehta here, academic institutions, public sector. We have our founding members already on board, think tanks, venture capitalists and other financing institutes. And not to say, we need the constant support of, MOEF, the Ozone Cell, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, EESL, these kind of organizations as well. I have summed it up in very simple steps. We start with the formulation of the technical committee and start inviting proposals for pilotable ideas. We have a few thoughts on how we could invite these proposals, but we are still open if there are any others that you want to recommend right now. We'll do a preliminary scrutiny of the received proposals, and then it will go up to the technical evaluation committee. Following which it will go up to the financial appraisal evaluation, the policy analysis, and a draft compendium that will be reviewed finally and then presented to MOEF for further action. We cannot do it without any of the partners. We have started discussions with some of the associations, and I also mentioned RMI here, which has launched the Global Cooling Prize. And Bakri sir mentioned about the mission innovation, and we want to see how we can dovetail all of this so that they don't work in isolation, and we can club and maximize our impact. So with that, thank you very much, and I would leave it at that, and then we have the rest of the session to take questions, and I'll be happy to answer this question. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Karan. Thank you very much. And now you know who is the person who you have to contact in case you have any doubts about the platform. It is Mr. Is Karan. And Karan, sorry for having misspelled your name in my moment of excitement in the beginning. I called him Malhotra instead of Mangotra. So Karan, thank you very much. It's an extremely innovative way in which we thank the ministry also for having blessed this initiative and our partners. I hope with the cooperation of all of you, we will be able to do good work in this and then submit something which is tangible and actionable to the ministry. So let me now invite the next speaker, Mr. Darwood Zailk from Washington, and we would love to hear his perspective on the issue of cooling and what he thinks about it. And incidentally, he is the co-chair. He heads the subcommittee which is co-chaired by Dr. Mathur and him, set up by the French President, Mr. Macron, under the One Planet Summit. And we will get to hear about One Planet Summit a little more at the end from the representative of the French Embassy, Mr. Paul Salver, who is with us today. So, Mr.
I will first start with something that's obvious but is always worth repeating, which is that we need to focus on the speed of our climate solutions. In the climate challenge we face, slow progress is no progress. So we have a chance here with the cooling sector to move very fast, to take a very big piece out of future warming. You know where we are with the 1.5 report from the IPCC that tells us we may have as little as 12 years before we add 50% more warming to the planet and hit the 1.5 mark. And what the IPCC special report did not focus on, but important for all of us to remember, is that there are also a series of self-reinforcing feedbacks in the climate system that causes today's warming to accelerate even if we do nothing further. And the loss of the Arctic sea ice is the case in point. So we are now down to 1% of multi-year ice in the Arctic. And when we lose all of the first-year ice, which could be within 15 years, plus or minus 10, that may mean 5 years, we lose this incredible white shield that sends a tremendous amount of heat back into space. And when we lose that, we will advance the 2-degree target by about 25 years. That means the time we have to operate is really, really short. And when you look at that and you recognize that speed has to become one of our most important metrics for measuring climate progress, you have to look at which of the solutions can give us the most avoided warming in the fastest time frame. You answer that question by looking first at the short-lived climate pollutants. So this is black carbon, and everybody knows that we reduce air pollution and we get great climate benefits and we save lives. It includes methane and tropospheric ozone, another short-lived set of pollutants that can give us tremendous cooling in a short term, and it includes HFCs. Now, the summary number that you need to remember with the short-lived climate pollutants is that aggressive action to reduce these pollutants can give you twice as much avoided warming at mid-century as aggressive CO2 mitigation. Got to do CO2, nobody disputes that, but it delivers its benefits on a slower time frame. When you're worried about those self-reinforcing feedbacks, again, speed matters. Got to slow them down right now. So within the short-lived climate pollutant package, here we talk about the HFCs, because that's what we use as a refrigerant in the cooling sector right now. We have, fortunately, with the help of India, passed the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, and I see some of my colleagues from the Montreal Protocol here. And taking out that short-lived climate pollutant, HFCs, can avoid up to 0.5 degree of future warming by the end of the century. Now, this has just been confirmed by the quadrennial assessment of the Scientific Assessment Panel of the Montreal Protocol. That assessment also tells us that the initial schedule of the Montreal Protocol gets us 80% of that 0.5 degrees. So we left a bit on the table, 20%. That means we have to speed up our effort to phase down the HFCs. Now, the quadrennial assessment also tells us, it was just published last week in its full 500 pages, that we can double that 0.5 degrees by adding energy efficiency of cooling equipment, giving us a challenge of avoiding a full 1 degree of future warming. And this is what's motivating President Macron in his effort with the One Planet Summit this year. And he has, as our chair mentioned, asked me and Ajay Mathur to lead the piece on the climate track on HFCs and energy efficiency for the One Planet Summit, which will be in Biarritz, August 25th. You'll correct me if I have any of these dates wrong. And it'll be combined with the G7. So this means leaders will be at this meeting as well. And this is very, very important. The One Planet Summit will also include regional meetings. First one will be in Nairobi, March 14th, and it'll include a summit between President Macron and President Kenyatta. First time a French president has visited Kenya in 50 years, so this is expected to be a historic meeting. And we also expect that we will have the opportunity to have President Kagame join from Rwanda. President Kagame was essential in the end game to the Kigali Agreement and is one of the champions of the full 1 degree strategy. So right now, what Ajay and I are doing is soliciting the best ideas for achieving the 1 degree of avoided warming. We won't get them all, but I hear already great possibilities in India, and I know the brilliant engineering capabilities of India. I know the great work that EESL has already done. So some of the ideas that are possible, and we're just right now still gathering, they would include procurement. Why should any government or any large purchaser buy an inefficient piece of equipment that is going to steal their money for the life of that equipment, even though it might seduce them with a slightly lower price in the beginning? It's a bad deal. EESL has taught us this and done their own procurement here. But there's a lot of the world to still teach, including private buyers. Why should a bank with branches throughout the world use inefficient air conditioning to cool its ATMs? Banks are smart on how they lend their money and how they calculate returns. They should never buy junk that steals energy. Similarly, countries should think carefully about what they let into their country. So many African states right now are saying, we do not let in inefficient secondhand equipment that steals our energy that we need for development and makes our consumers pay more. So that's another strategy that we're looking at. The idea of cooling plans that India is pioneering and Rwanda has done theirs, first 2 countries in the world to do this, very important. But perhaps what's going to be most important in this summit is to focus on the head of government leadership. So President Macron understands this, President Kagame understands this, and of course, Prime Minister Modi understands this. So we hope that we can recruit Prime Minister Modi to join the Paris summit and to make whatever pledges are possible that include speeding ratification and implementation of Kigali and other pledges that can be made on the energy efficiency side. So I know that this, the rest of this discussion will give me further ideas and further ideas for Ajay, and the entire 3-day session will as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jalke. The potential of the cooling and its impact on environment. This is established and very well known. The challenge, as Dr. Jalke has pointed out, is to move towards the 1 degree possible goal, from its contribution, which is very well recognized, to enhance that possible contribution. And then the One Planet Summit, which is coming up, is certainly going to help us move in that direction. I'm sure Dr. Love is listening to what Dr. Zelka said, and then we will listen to other speakers so as to able to form a clear view about this. The next speaker that we have is Mr. Jack Schmidt, and he heads the NRDC's international program on climate, clean energy in several countries of the world, including India. So it will be a pleasure listening to him. Can we take this there?
You want me to speak up there? Is that easier?
Perhaps you can come over here. His chair is vacant.
Right. Thank you. I get to sit at the head of the table. I'm going to take advantage of this. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you for having me. I think everybody in this room knows the benefits of moving fast on cooling and the Montreal Protocol. India obviously played a critical role, but I think it's worth actually stepping back a little bit and thinking about the benefits. So Durwood gave you some of the global numbers. I want to just give you a little bit of an India context. The estimates of what can be achieved in India from achieving the Kigali Amendment is in the order of 2 to 6 billion tons of CO2 equivalent through 2050. That's quite a bit. I can tell you, having done some analysis of how to sort of get us on a closer to 2 or 1.5 degree trajectory. When you're talking in the billions of tons, that's important and significant numbers. And that doesn't include the benefits that Durwood mentioned in terms of adding on top of that the energy efficiency benefits. So there's a huge potential to sort of speed up the transition, help to save the climate by doing the sort of twin benefits of transforming the coolants used in air conditioners while you simultaneously do the energy efficiency. And so it came up in a panel I was on this morning. What's the benefits of both? I think one of the pieces that we've always found, and we've heard this from the manufacturers, is the engineers always sort of know what they want to do, but the business people never let them open up the hood and do that because they only do that every 5-7 years. And so by transforming the coolants in these air conditioners, it creates that opportunity for the engineers to sort of get in there and do the magic that they like to do. And so there's an opportunity to sort of, as companies are starting to make the transitions for their air conditioner sector to get more in compliant with the Kigali Amendment, there's this opportunity to get the twin benefits of energy efficiency. I'll just cover a couple, I think, of the opportunities that are out there. There's manyfold. Durwood mentioned a couple of them, but to sort of round it out, there's a basket of opportunities that are available through the Montreal Protocol. Obviously, part of that has to be delivered by countries ratifying it, which thankfully we now, the Kigali Amendment has entered into force with 60 or more than 60 countries joining that agreement. Obviously, we're working, my colleagues are working in trying to get the U.S. on board in that, and I know we'd love to have India join on to the ratification. Montreal Protocol provides this benefit through the the MLF fund, but also recently at the Kyoto meeting just adopted a signal to try to sort of unlock innovative finance that can sort of couple the HFC phase down with energy efficiency. So how can you get places like the World Bank, IFC to combine their financing with ADB, et cetera, the private sector with the opportunities provided by grants from the MLF. I think the second piece, which is a growing opportunity, my organization with UN Environment is working with a number of stakeholders to try to see if we could adopt what a global standard might look like for the best air conditioners in the world, and trying to, well, maybe not the best, but at least sort of shooting for the best, so that countries that want to adopt strong standards that couple HFC phase downs with energy efficiency can sort of have a ready sort of toolkit to adopt. The government of China is right now currently looking at the set of standards that they're going to adopt for the next round of their air conditioning standards. We're working in Latin America and at the global level to try to see if we can move those standards forward. So that gets me, I think, to the third piece, which is the opportunities provided by the India Cooling Action Plan, which when it came out, it was, I think, quite a groundbreaking in the sense of sort of taking a holistic look at how you would deal with cooling in a very hot climate, and it sort of brought forward, thankfully, and thanks to our colleagues in the government, a holistic picture on that, which includes the progress on air conditioner, but it also includes the things like the building envelope, what kind of services you're providing, this sort of whole kit and caboodle. And then the last piece, which I think is a huge opportunity, as we just heard, is the pilot platform for innovative cooling technologies, because as we know from lots of experience, you can't always just sort of copy and paste things from different jurisdictions. So what works in a place like China may not work in a place like India. And so it's really important to sort of bring forward the sort of best technologies and standards and so forth that are being adopted at a global level, and then figure out how you might need to tweak them and design them in an Indian context. I must say, though, I've always been impressed at when we first started going deep into trying to move the Kigali Agreement, some of the Indian companies were on the cutting edge of that. And so I've always been impressed at the amount of innovation that's already happening. You have a number of companies already offering products in the Indian context that both don't cook the planet, but also simultaneously reduce the energy needs of those pieces. And so with that, I'm happy to stop and turn it over to our esteemed chair.
You can keep sitting here.
But you may need more speakers. I'll move if you need another.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Thank you very much for exhorting the industry to come forward on the possible ambition. And of course, as you said, the financing is the key. There are several possibilities emerging there, as you have mentioned some of them. The MLF is there. There are other stakeholders coming forward to put in money to be able to build up the momentum of combining the HFC phase down with energy efficiency. And then this, I'm sure this platform which we have just launched will also perhaps help this movement forward. At this point, I'll just like to visit one of the issues which we are struggling with. One of the possible ways in which we can bring down the cost and help the greater financing of these measures is to adopt an appropriate business model. lead in India is an extremely good, shining example of what the appropriate business models can do to bring the cost down. One of the stumbling blocks, I'm sure the industry people who are present here will endorse me on this, that the high upfront cost of the air conditioners is one of the key issues. Why the industry is not able to make this transition? Because industry, even if it's willing, even if the technological solutions are available, the consumers have to be in sync with them, and they should be able to ready to take this technology forward. So we will one of the questions which we have to resolve is to how to make it affordable, how at the same time make it available to the industry in a manner that they can convey it to the consumer. So we will have to find the economically viable solutions along with technologically viable solutions to move the needle further. Now let me invite the next speaker, Mr. Sudipto Chakravarti from Honeywell. I forgot to read out his name at the beginning when introducing him. So let me invite him to give the perspective, being an important industry stakeholder.
Speak from there, is it fine? Okay. Good evening, everybody. Being part of Honeywell, it gives us an immense pleasure to be part of this event along with Shakti Foundation and NRDC to launch this platform program to the next generation refrigerants. So before we go into the exact, so I think Dravus mentioned the need for speed right now. The speed is very essential. There are alternatives which are available, which we feel can help us bridge this gap. And as Sir said, that it's important to come with a technical as well as economic evaluation. Keeping that in mind, most of the segments that is served by refrigerants, starting from chillers, we can go to commercial refrigerants. Some of its aspects are used in foams and blowing agents. These are all places where still is dominated by HFCs and even some places HCFCs. So the next gen alternatives are available in the market with many of our companies along with Honeywell. The idea here is what we are with this platform is enable people, the OEs, to understand how this works good for the Indian panorama. When we come and we talk about geographies, there has been done, but when it comes to India, the climatic condition, the usage, the application changes drastically. You will have to have pilot runs in India to convey to the users that this makes sense, this is adoptable. Keeping this in mind, we have certain programs that we have started in the chiller sections with certain OEs. We have started in the air conditioners. We have adopted our certain refrigerants in HF. The next generation is HFOs, I am sure all of you are aware of, the hydrofluoroolefins. We are trying our pilot platforms, and we are confident that they are greener, which is an important aspect for the next generation blowing agents, as well as energy efficient, at least at par, if not better. So we have this gamut of refrigerants which can bridge this gap, which Sir just mentioned, where we have a technical solution. Just how to adopt in an economical manner to sustain for India's growth is the question. Now, as you say, you see the Honeywell, when we see a Honeywell logo, it says the power of connected, because we call ourselves an industrial software company. So along with just giving refrigerants, we are trying to say how we can enable software to augment better energy efficiency, just not just from the refrigerants, how to maintain and upkeep your chillers, preventive. This comes as well as a dashboard package along with the refrigerants that we sell as the next generation, which helps at least 7 to 8% energy efficiency in a square feet of 10,000 feet square. So this is what we have in plate, and we were really happy to work with the different government organizations, Shakti and RDC, to bring to the next generation refrigerants in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudipto. Thank you very much for giving us an insight into what Honeywell is doing on this and what you think about it. Let me now invite Mr. Krishnan Dhawan from the Shakti Foundation, who has been an abiding partner with us in many things, including this one. And we would love to listened to his views, representing an important foundation that he does. His views, not only from his from the point of view of his organization, but also since he has looked at the issues from the sidelines of a larger development, I would like to have the benefit of his advice.
Let's move, or should I move?
I think if you can stretch
That's okay,
yourself.
I won't
it's,
reach across. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and Mr. Rashmi, thank you for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here at the launch of this important platform, and congratulations to the TERI team to have brought it to this stage with support from NRDC and Honeywell as well as us. I think this is clearly a very important next step after the launch of the India Cooling Action Plan, which Shakti was pleased to support organizations like TERI and other think tanks to put together to a point where I believe we were the first country to come out with something. And thank you to Mr. Amit Love and the MOEFCC and the Ozone Cell for having been fully engaged and a very supportive partner in all these conversations. I think much has been said already about the importance and the urgency of the issues being discussed. So there's not too much that I need to add given what's already been said. And while we see the downsides of not taking appropriate action, it may be useful also to look at the opportunities and the potential for that this challenge presents. In terms of just the expected increase in demand for additional units in this country and across the world, and the ability to innovate and bring forth new technologies and new products, I think it presents a tremendous business opportunity, which I would hope our friends in industry would lean into very aggressively in terms of providing both appropriate and affordable solutions for our needs around refrigerants. It is an expensive process. I recognize switching from refrigerants every few years, but just the sheer scale of the opportunity, and that's where I think India is distinct and unique, where the scale of the opportunity just, I think, is, apart from China, really isn't presented anywhere else in the world. The focus of the platform is to translate technology ideas into pilots and then to take them to market. I think we need to recognize that global solutions aren't necessarily Indian solutions, and there is no one India solution. We have a multiplicity of climatic zones with differences in heat and humidity. So I think we need to bisect or actually divide the market into the multiple zones that have been done through earlier studies and develop products and standards for those products in terms of measuring those products that are appropriate for each zone. And there again, I think India provides a great testing ground because if these products can be successfully deployed here, it would cover climatic conditions in many parts of the world where cooling is necessary. So I think it should be an opportunity for great investment and great interest. Mr. Bakre talked about the energy consumption and demand supply issues. In subsequent conversations, we've discussed the huge climatic impact that air conditioners have, not just from their energy consumption patterns, but also as a function of the refrigerants that are in use. Mention was made on buildings and building design. I think that's an area that hasn't got the attention it deserves. One has to make an aggressive attempt at reducing the need for cooling through effective use of design and materials, which I believe just hasn't been done enough. There are significant opportunities, again, in our country in terms of expected new builds. Just the Prime Minister's affordable housing scheme represents 4 billion square feet conservatively of new build, which will be around with us for the next 50 to 75 years. And if we can make a dent in the cooling needs of all that new build, I think we will really be doing ourselves a major favor going forward in terms of reducing long-term energy demand. I'd also highlight the fact that this is called a platform. This is not something that one organization can do on its own, and it's designed to be a meeting ground for organizations, industry, think tanks, the government, and other stakeholders, and which is what Terry has designed it to be. And I will welcome the engagement of all concerned, because it is a task, it's a large task which needs many points of view and lots of expertise to take forward. So with that, I'd like to thank you again for your presence, and thank you for the opportunity for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Dhawan. It was a pleasure listening to you. We now would like to invite Dr. Amit Love, who is heading the ozone cell in the Ministry of Environment and also is the nodal person for implementing the National Cooling Action Plan. Before he gives his views and outlines the plan which the government has, we are all agreed on this issue of importance of cooling and moving towards making this transition to better refrigerants, to better cooling systems. Not only from energy point of view, Dr. Bhakre emphasized the energy aspect, the saving in terms of energy. The several other speakers have emphasized the environmental and other dimensions of the cooling, the other benefits. But the key aspect, the key issue which we need to struggle with in implementing any cooling plan and fixing its objectives is what kind of strategy we are going to adopt. How is it that we are going to motivate the industry or get the industry on board? Who will be the real implementers in this? So we will actually need to understand their concerns. What is it that the industry wants? What is it that the consumers want? What will they be comfortable with? Given the fact that they need to make this transition. The importance of transition is known, is established. And the importance of transition can be established in several other ways. There are voluntary measures possible. There are regulatory measures possible. So far, government has not come up with any specific regulatory requirement, but one of the speakers did refer to the standards. Standards is one regulatory route which is possible in this field, and it can bring a certain degree of predictability and then also impact the costs. So it can perhaps be one of the ways in which you can reduce the costs or you can modulate the costs, but there are other ways in which it can be done, and that is why we need to listen to the elements of the strategy which the government has in mind. Dr. Amit Love.
Thank you, sir. I thank Terry to give me an opportunity to be here with all of you. Actually, practically, we have all the stakeholders who are linked with cooling. Just a kind of a personal trivia first, that it's an immense pleasure for me to be here because I've worked with sir, and he was an integral part when we actually agreed to move ahead with the Kigali Amendment. So I've learned quite a few things from Rashmi sir, who has been our Special Secretary and Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Environment and Forests. Okay, so what I'll do is, and of course I'm very happy to be here with very distinguished panel. I would just say 2, 3, 4 points for everybody to think about. I think so everybody agrees that cooling is cross-sectoral, and there are many sectors of the economy which are directly impacted by cooling. And cooling has also been linked with SDGs. Since 2016, when we were in Kigali, or maybe a year before that, the Ozone Secretariat started to talk about Montreal Protocol linkages with SDGs. So that establishes that there is a legitimate requirement to address the cooling needs of the country in various sectors. And it's also acknowledged that much of the cooling which we do presently is refrigerant based. The penetration of alternative technologies and the new horizon technologies are still coming. That being said, the cooling then becomes hinged to the Montreal Protocol to a large extent. And that's the reason ozone cell, the Ministry of Environment and Forest came in to develop India Cooling Action Plan, which was integrated in its approach. And the thrust of the Cooling Action Plan was that we were looking in that we should be able to synergize our actions across various programs of the government, across various ministries which we are dealing with. Importantly, we felt that we will be able to deliver on this because under the Montreal Protocol in earlier transitions, and thanks to our industry colleagues here, we have been able to do things which even the developed world was not able to do. That is, in some sectors, we were able to move to climate-friendly refrigerants far more faster than they did it. So we have examples where our industry has supported us to move ahead fast. The Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol also is kind of put forth certain challenges to the industry, governments, and one of the most important challenge being that we are implementing in the era of patents. So many of the technologies we are talking about are patented. Well, that's not a limitation, but I'll just talk on that a little bit later. So while we were doing our India Cooling Action Plan, we kind of developed sectoral chapters. There was a separate chapter on innovation and R&D. So we felt while deliberating with all our colleagues from think tanks, government departments, that we will not be able to achieve the broader goal of sustainability if we don't have a structured support to innovation and R&D. And for that, of course, as Mr. Bhakre said, we have DST's Mission Innovation. DST also has a separate program. We also subsequently came to know about a program which is run by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, under which they provide funding to the faculties to develop human resources in critical areas. So the importance of innovation and R&D is not lost. So we in the India Cooling Action Plan have kind of focused on that, and it's a welcome step which Terry has done to bring out this platform. But I would like to put forth 2-3 thoughts which may be deliberated here, and one of them being that, of course, we'll be in the forefront both in terms of going for low GWP molecules. We would also be, I believe so, in the forefront in the energy efficiency domain. But what could be talked with and maybe can be also addressed in the platform is that there is an intrinsic linkage between environment and trade presently. That we need to recognize. And but that doesn't say that we'll not follow a path which is of low carbon growth, because that's the stated path of the government, and we'll be pushing for it. I have a colleague from Honeywell here, and we were having a stakeholder on Friday. Incidentally, many of the foam manufacturing units told me that we don't have a commercial price for foam HFO, that is Solstice. But needless to say that I would agree with Mr. Zelke here, that it's a time where we have to move fast. The governments need to show commitments so that the ultimate goal of climate change is agreed to and implemented. And the India Cooling Action Plan is definitely that. The intervention scenarios which we have developed shows that in the 20 years time coming, of course, we would be able to cut down our energy consumption by 30% across various sectors. So I can assure the gathering here that we are at it, and we would try to be as energy efficient as possible, follow a low carbon path, which is the stated policy of the Government of India. And we also recognize the importance of innovation and R&D in that. We have to find low energy solutions, and from the government side, we will be moving kind of fast track on this. And of course, it is always better if we have many initiatives in a size of a country like India to go together whenever we are dealing with aspects of innovation and R&D. So I wish all the success to TERI on their platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Love. You have been brief but very emphatic. So thanks. It's a good signal to the industry. Let me now invite Mr. Paul Salve. He is from the Embassy of France, and he would like to give us a broad, some information, and he will inform us about the vision of the President Macron on One Planet Summit, what is in store for us. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rashmi, for allowing me to say a few words about the One Planet Summit. So I will be very brief. When the French president came in power in 2017, he said that France had a special role to play in implementing the Paris Agreement, because of course France was very much invested in reaching this agreement, and also I think as a former investment banker, he was convinced that finance is very important, and so we launched this initiative of the One Planet Summit, and I think that he had two main ideas. First, this idea that we need to scale up our initiatives and to bring more speed, so in implementing them. So as a few speakers said earlier today. And so, of course, the COP process is very important. The COP sets the objectives, it sets the rules for implementing the NDCs, but he thought that we should have a platform to bring many actors around the table and take new commitments and concrete actions. And I think his second idea was that public finance is not sufficient to implement the Paris Agreement objectives, that we have to mobilize private finance. And so he wanted also to bring as many actors around the table. So that's why he launched the One Planet Summit. The first edition of the One Planet Summit was in Paris in December 2017. It brought together 50 heads of states, but also many private actors, NGOs, think tanks, philanthropists, banks, investment funds. And at this, in Paris, so 12 commitments were taken in many areas. I will just quote a few of them. So among the 12 commitments, there is a commitment towards decarbonized economy, which includes the International Solar Alliance, zero pollution transport, but also actions of central banks and businesses, international mobilization of development banks, commitment by sovereign funds, mobilizing institutional investors. And each commitment has to translate into concrete actions. And so there is a One Planet website, a One Planet Summit website, where you can find all those commitments and those actions. For instance, at the first One Planet Summit, 6 sovereign wealth funds announced the creation of an environment framework, to guide the decisions in terms of investments in environment. There was also a commitment by 10 philanthropists, to do more on climate and to convince other philanthropists to do so. So that was the first One Planet Summit. The second One Planet Summit took place in New York in September. So it was the occasion to report on the actions of the first One Planet Summit and to take new actions. So for instance, Google committed to provide nearly 10,000 cities worldwide with new data to help them create and implement ambitious climate action plans. And the New York One Planet Summit also decided to create a One Planet Lab to find ideas for new commitments and actions. And so that's why, why am I talking about the One Planet Summit today? So because within this One Planet Lab, so the French president personally asked to, so Ajay Mathur of TERI and Mr. Zilk of IGSD to work on a strategy to cut HFC emissions. So they have been asked to work on first like a long-term roadmap to cut HFC emissions, but also some short-term actions that could be presented. And so the next steps, so there will be a new One Planet Summit in Africa, so in Kenya on the 14th of March, and there will be another one in the margins of the G7 summit in France, in Biarritz, in August. And actually, so of course it's important because the G7 I mean, brings together the 7 biggest economies, but the G7 actually will be enlarged to other countries, and so India will take part to the G7 as well. So yes, this is the roadmap, and because what's happening in India, of course, is very important for the rest of the world, and so I'm sure that what India is doing in reducing HFC emissions and in improving energy efficiency in cooling can be very useful for the rest of the world. And I hope that today's work and the TERI work and IGSD work can be useful for the other countries and can be highlighted and scaled up in the One Planet Summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Holway. We have had the benefit of listening to several speakers. There is a cross-section of ideas and views on this issue, on the future strategy for reducing the energy consumption in cooling sector, as well as reducing the refrigerants with high globally warming potential. So now we have come to the end of this session. There will be another session immediately following this, where you will have an opportunity to throw your questions at the panelists and others. But at this stage, if any one of you have any queries, immediate queries, since the panelists are still here with us, you are most welcome to raise your finger and fire your questions. Yes, the gentleman here and then there. Yes. Kindly introduce yourself and mention the panelist from whom you want the answer.
Well, regarding this platform, I think so. Karan will tell, but of course, in our cooling action plan, we have recognized the importance of built environment, both commercial and residential. So obviously, cities have a very important role in that. And there are recommendations in the draft cooling action plan which talk about reduction in the cooling requirement of buildings through implementation of the ECBC. In our implementation framework which we have put forward, we have also recognized that we have to take the state governments and the urban local bodies along if we have to implement. So to that extent, in the draft ICAP, that's the cooling action plan, we have addressed that, but how those cities would be represented in the platform here, I think so Karan will reply, but I suppose they will have some mechanism because it's participative and collective. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invite for this conference. My name is Ashish Vaishnav. I'm from a company called Thematic. I represent industry, the cooling industry, but in terms of what the technology does is very different than what gets discussed in most of the forums. In forums where we are discussing cooling, the number one, of course, is the refrigerant issue. And we started with 20 years ago with HCFCs, and then we came to HFCs, and now we go to HFOs. So But there is an alternative technology which is there, because we essentially talk of the electrical chillers. The prime mover then comes to, along with the refrigerant, it goes in the same breath is the energy is power. So, but there is an alternate technology which has been also equally around and especially used in the eastern countries like Japan, Korea, and also China. I have had the fortune to be in China for almost 8 years, between 2004 to 2012, and engaged in the cooling business. So, I have seen the future of India, if I have to say, in some ways. So my question was, while we have spent a lot of time in discussions around refrigerants and energy based on power, like you said, here also we said Ministry of Power being involved in this, obviously, because there is a big segment called the RACs, which is the room air conditioner, which depend on that. But there is this alternate technology which uses heat as the energy source. Now, heat can be defined as waste heat, which unfortunately is the only word which is used with it. But there is also heat could be generated by forms which are carbon neutral forms, which are finally today you are not looking at only cost of energy today in terms of what you pay to run it, but also the cost of climate change, which we are worried about today. So I don't think so for a context like India, we still have brought that to the table, or the right it deserves on the table, where it is a ready-made actual technology available and being used for years together, even a country like India. Largely in the industrial space, because industry is a one-to-one situation. A guy in the industry is worried about himself, doesn't need to come to forums. He takes the benefit. In Indian context, where there's a technology which does away with power totally and uses heat as a source of energy, which could be natural gas also, and also does away with refrigerant issue altogether. I mean, you will never want to change water as a refrigerant ever.
So you're making a question, or is it a suggestion to the industry?
Is a question, is from a point of view, Mr. Love is aware, we have been talking about this. Where is it finding its pace in the India Cooling Action Plan?
I can take all the, okay. Well, it does find a space in the India Cooling Action Plan. Under the HVAC technology chapter, we have a set of technologies which are refrigerant based. We have a not-in-kind technologies, a separate section, and we also have now we are proposing to put forward a little bit elaborate section on horizon technologies. So we recognize that the level of demand which we have to cater, it can't be solely based upon one set of technologies. Yeah.
Gentleman there. Just two questions, because we have to now end this session. Yes, gentleman there, please. Is there a microphone which we can pass on? Fair enough. The point is taken. Yes.
My question is, I'm Dr. Satish Kumar with the Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy. My question relates to this creation of this forum and platform, and specifically related to refrigerant. And of course, I think we are talking about HCFCs, HFCs, and HFOs. But we know that there is another set of refrigerants, which is like natural refrigerants. So the discussion that is happening, will that take into account some of the non-proprietary refrigerants that are also, I think, increasingly finding a role, and lots of good examples there. And the second point is that given the history of refrigerant development, a lot of that has happened in the private sector. So I think
Amit Love talked about the role of R&D as well, and this platform also talks about. So what is the role of the public R&D institutions, and whether there is a sense, I think, that they can play a significant or a critical role moving forward in the solutions that are going to come in this area.
No, I think it's a very important point, and in a way he has already replied to that. But if you would like to expand it on a little further, for his satisfaction.
Yeah. First, I must, sir, acknowledge one thing. I have many of my partners who were involved in the development of the India Cooling Action Plan here. One of them, Dr. Satish Karan, is here, and of course, CEW, yeah, Shikha is here. So, I must tell you that we have the best of whatever you can think in the draft. And I would request is if you can further improve it and have some suggestions, I'll take it forward. Regarding DHC, we have a separate section on district heating and cooling, now. And while we were deliberating, I'm told that district heating and cooling can definitely be part of new field development. However, in older setups, it might have some difficulty, but even in the greenfield scenario, it is more of a issue of a body which runs that district heating cooling, but we know we are aware of that and we'll be addressing that. Regarding natural refrigerants, of course, again, the platform will have to respond, but with respect to our India Cooling Action Plan, we are cognizant of the fact that we have a domestic manufacturer who's working on natural refrigerants, and consistently, they were actually the first to commercialize, and we take a lot of pride in that. And of course, that technology is always available with us, and we'll take it forward.
Thank you. At this stage, let me close this discussion. And I must extend my thanks to all the panelists who have given their valuable views, and all of you also who have been patiently listening and interacting with us. And as a token of our appreciation on behalf of Terry, we would like to just give a small memento to the speakers.
Yeah. I, on behalf of Terry and support partners, extend a hearty thanks to all dignitaries for the valuable presence and address. We all inspired by your great words. We would also like to acknowledge gratitude to our partners, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, NRDC, and Honeywell and their team for their valuable support. A special thanks to all the stakeholders for making their time in attending our conference. We hope that this association of ours continues and strengthens in the times to come. Thank you. Now we are proceeding to session 2 on the stakeholders consultation. I would request Dr. Zalki and Mr. Mangotra to take the lead for discussions.
While some of the discussions go on in the corridor, let me start by, stating the irony of the world that we stay in. Everybody talks about global warming and how the world is warming. That means we need more cooling. And as we need more cooling, the world will warm more. So with that irony in mind, let me hand it over to Durwood on, what we intend to do as, part of our sub-theme on HFCs under the One Planet Summit. And then we can go around the table, have a discussion and understand, the stakeholder needs of various kind of stakeholders that are there in the room. Durwood, over to you.
Yes, irony that we have to resolve. So those of you who were here just a moment ago know that we need speed, and we have an opportunity to bring that speed to the One Planet Summit. We are fortunate to have President Macron be a leader on this, and we've seen in the Kigali Amendment the critical role of leadership from the heads of government. And this came in the Kigali Amendment from President Barack Obama. It came from Prime Minister Modi. It came from President Xi. It came from President Kagame. And that gave a unique opportunity for the ministers and their ozone units to come to an agreement. When we passed the Kigali Amendment 2 years ago, people may not have noticed, but in the amendment itself, there's an energy efficiency requirement that says you have to maintain or enhance energy efficiency when you do the switch out of refrigerants. In the past, every refrigerant transition we've done under Montreal has catalyzed improvements in energy efficiency. We heard Jake talk about this. Engineers say to their boss, we have an opportunity here as we switch refrigerants to improve the compressor, the heat exchanger, make a better product. So we've gotten a bump in efficiency of up to 30% in many cases. But this time, the Montreal Protocol Party said, let's be more deliberate in capturing the energy efficiency benefits. So there's a provision in the amendment itself, and there's a second decision that was taken right after the excitement of Minister of Environment Vincent Biruta in Rwanda banging down the gavel on the Kigali Amendment. And this was a proposal by Rwanda and Morocco to promote energy efficiency more explicitly. And that has been followed by a series of decisions in every meeting since then of the Montreal Protocol parties, including the last one, which said the Montreal Protocol dedicated funding mechanism called the Multilateral Fund should work with the Secretariat of the treaty to find modalities for reaching out for funding for energy efficiency outside. The Montreal Protocol Multilateral Fund will not become the sole funder of energy efficiency. This is a well-developed field, and we'll find the linkages to be the most important. So that's going forward. We, as I said, have President Macron now leading this particular effort within the One Planet Summit. One Planet Summit has actually 4 tracks. It has one on oceans, one on biodiversity, and one on climate, and the one on climate has 2 pieces. So the first piece is being led by Laurence Toubiana. Many of you will be familiar with her for her incredible role in achieving the Paris Agreement as the ambassador for climate change at that time. And Bertrand Piccard, who's famous for his flight around the world in his solar-powered airplane. And that will focus on getting more jurisdictions to join the pledge to be carbon neutral by 2050. To be climate neutral at 2050, we need to squeeze out all inefficiency, even as we shift to clean energy. So those go hand in hand. Squeeze out inefficiency, as we're proposing with the cooling equipment, and move to the clean energy future. The 4th track, as we heard from the French embassy representative, is on finance. And of course, President Macron comes from a finance background. He knows how important it is to get the money right. So we expect to see more pledges from the philanthropic side, as well as the even bigger pie from the private finance side. So this is the expectation, and yet it's just an expectation. So we're here to solicit ideas, and the moment is perfect because India has just started this platform. You are gathering ideas. India has the first cooling action plan in draft with ideas that so far have satisfied everyone in this room, from new types of cooling to district cooling. That gentleman seems to have left. And this plan may become the template for much of the world. And I expect to hear more from you, but that's the current state of play. Thank you.
Thank you, Durwood, for explaining, the expectations from this session. But as part of the One Planet Summit, the thing that we want to achieve is to, get all the views, as Durwood was mentioning, and come up with some key messages that we can put out. So let me, at this note, invite our first speaker. We have all been talking about the EESL bulk procurement and how we can use economies of scale to our advantage. So I thought it'll be worthwhile to have them as the first speaker to take us through what their experience was with the first bulk procurement of air conditioners. Ashish. Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Karan. So good afternoon, all of you. I think the discussion was very relevant, and it actually gives me many of the times to actually stand up and say something. But let's start. I tried to summarize and say few of the things, right, about ESL, although everybody knows. But starting with ESL bulk procurement model, which is very successful, especially starting with the Ujala program. Already we have sold more than 320 million LED bulbs, which have saved more than 10,000 megawatt every year. And that converts about 75,000 crore rupees every year. So this is the one of our very famous and flagship program. Apart from that, we have street lighting national program and e-vehicle. We have also entered into the tri-generation and district energy system. Already a few days back, we had some agreements at Maharashtra. So we are doing into various of the things, but because air conditioner is the today's subject, so we just want to highlight our basically experience, what experience we had, especially in our last procurement, and what we are going to do in the next few months. So starting with the last procurement which we had done, especially for 1 lakh super energy efficient ACs of ISWR 5.2, the issue was we hope for that the cost was the lesser, but we unable to get the cost advantage. We have tried our level, but ultimately almost 20,000 AC we have able to install in the buildings, but not because of the cost thing. We unable to move very aggressively into that program. So we have think what were the issues, what were the challenges, and now we are coming with a pilot demonstration, and that pilot demonstration we are going to conduct with our partners. So we have already identified our partners. So we are starting at Mumbai, at especially Maharashtra and Delhi. So we have partnered with BACS Rajdhani as for now. So I want to thank to them, and Thane Municipal Corporation. So one ULB and one DISCOM. So what we are going to do is, because last time there was less of a marketing awareness apart from the cost issue, right? So we have actually tried to use the partners' USP, that how they can actually go to their customers. So let's say if we talk about BACS, right? So they have those energy bills, they have those kiosks. So we are trying to, let's first of all do this pilot and actually kickstart and understand what customer needs. So in terms of the customer, first time we are actually going online. So what we are going to do is Amazon type of thing, where like a customer can actually order from their home and they can get their delivery, whatever the complaint management issues. So those things we have actually introduced in our system, but still we are very hopeful that how the cost advantage in this procurement can actually bring the major issue. So one more thing I want to address here, which is very important to say, that in this time of design, what we had done is we had designed our financial model and that is a very unique model. So what this model is, we are getting our multilateral, bilateral funding, and that funding is actually making that small pilot. So normally what we do is we have our financing cost, our debt equity, right? So that cost X amount higher what procurement we do normally. So because of this time, we got this arrangement, and we are also seeing the next few years, the scale, and let's say 7-8 millions every year, the AC is being sold, and we have almost 2017 inventory is in stock, almost 4 crore. So the point is the potential is huge. So we are trying through this pilot demonstration, doing with the super energy efficient AC, with the taking that refrigerant low GWP into thing. So that's what we program. So we just want to hear from everybody if some inputs can be provided, if some, you can say, a partnership can be done, so that it can be the pilot can be actually very successful, and when we can think for very successful programs in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish. I think the key message that Ashish was highlighting, that we need to build more of these effective coalitions of demand generators to use scale to our advantage. We talk about scale and speed, and this is one of those models that we could work towards. Following this, I think it'll be worthwhile to hear from Mr. Mehta on what are the challenges and enabling tools that the industry is looking for financing this transition or overcoming the technological barrier. But before I hand it over to him, can I request everybody to keep their interventions to around 3 minutes? We have another session here at 4, and I have the tricky task of closing it on time, otherwise we get into a cascade of delays. Mehta sir, floor is all yours. Thank you.
I personally feel, is it audible? Yeah. That comparing air conditioner with LED bulb is not a correct comparison. See, one is you can say, a consumer goods item which is replaced every now and then. And second is a durable consumer good where the customer is more conscious about its benefits, as well as the problem which arise while using the air conditioners. In LED bulb, you could reduce the cost as well as the price because of the change of technology also, from the earlier technology to the LED technology. And second thing was that there is a huge demand in the government segment. I think, if I am not mistaken, in air conditioners also, whatsoever 20,000 years old, most of them are again to public sector undertakings. So I think they have to interact with the manufacturers, whether they can become their agents to sell, or they, let's try which they have thought about the online sale like Amazon and all that. But always keep in mind that while purchasing an air conditioner, customer always also looks into what will happen to the after sale service.
Thank you, sir. I think these are very, very important points, and I would also like to draw your attention on the policy brief that we have released today on the critical analysis of the first tranche of EESL's bulk procurement. And one of the findings there was that LEDs and ACs do not work the same way. Thank you.
There is no change in technology. The margin which is available is only the marketing cost. So that may be 5-10%, that's all.
So to add Mehta sir's point, I have some few things to add here, especially about the marketing, because what we are doing with the pilot, that our partners will basically do that activity apart from us. And secondly, in terms of the after sales service, so same as like online this Amazon, we basically have this complaint management system. So the point is, we are trying to do all these activities, but the pain point for us is what will be the cost of the AC will be for us. So say for example, if we discuss with manufacturer, so they told us that the cost of manufacturing of that AC is almost, you can say, half of that, and maybe lower than that. But point is that advantage is not coming back to in form of the in form of this type of program where like some, because last time what happened was the cost was too high. The, if the cost is too high, ultimately your ROI and those things will not work. So the cost factor is one of the, well, let's say LED, we've reduced from 300 to 60 rupees, right? So that's where the change was happened.
So let me now turn gears and, since we've also launched the platform today, invite one of the technology providers, Toro, to take us through the innovative thing that you have, and as a innovative solution provider, what are the challenges you would face and you would want us to make note of as we move towards the One Planet Summit?
Yeah, I suppose to start with, this is probably a disruption, because we are talking about the same air conditioner for the last 5 years. I have been in Delhi coming to these conferences, and there can only be possibility of incremental improvements on air conditioner. It is not possible to make any drastic change in the energy or in the refrigerant for that matter, barring the new refrigerants which are so-called not synthetic materials, natural refrigerants. Could be ammonia, could be hydrocarbons or whatever. The whole world is looking at this problem. We are not the only ones. But I think we are probably immune to thinking beyond conventional air conditioning. Today, at least there are 3 possibilities which are being examined. One was done by NREL many years back, a desiccant cooling technology, which is very suitable for America or for the European countries because the ambient temperatures are low. At the same time, there are 2 new technologies. One is the radiant cooling, which is very, very suitable for India, but obviously it has something to do with the building itself, so with more to do with the architecture. What Toro has been working on is what we call dual path technology, which is based on separating the sensible and latent cooling. So this is the only way by which one can cut the energy cost by 30 to 50% and cut the refrigerant also by the same order. This is what we are trying to do. It's in a long haul. We are here for 10 years trying to not sell, but just introduce, test. And this year, we have gone commercial. And we are part of the program on global cooling price. We are participating in that. Yeah. So I will be happy to answer any questions if there are.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Actually, these are the kind of proposals we would also like to solicit as part of our platform. And I understand the challenges. We call it the financial hump to move towards commercialization. But moving from a disruptive technology, if I can draw our attention to an academic in this area, Professor Sarvanan from the Anna University. So if you would want to highlight, how does this work in theory? How does the academia think about what are the scope of improvement that we have?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Terry, for inviting us. So like our friend said, there is a limit on Carnot limit. Carnot limit works on the temperatures. You cannot improve beyond certain limit on the efficiency of a conventional system. So the going for non-kind systems like a desiccant cooling system or evaporative cooling system is the key for the success of reducing overall energy consumption in this area. Okay? But when you consider this resource efficiency viewpoint, okay, so from the generation to site COP, whatever the improvement in air conditioning COP you do, about 10, okay, even if you multiply by 3 times, your resource efficiency will not go as high as 3 times. Because you have a source to site factor of 0.2 for Indian condition. Okay, if you burn 1 unit of energy at the power plant, what you get at the site is only 0.2. We have energy efficiency losses at the power plant, transmission, distribution losses at the line, which all contributes to losses in the system. So the best thing is to generate energy on site, use it for cooling, is a solution for
in this for Indian context, like a poly generation. So decentralized option is the key. Okay, and this is one option. The other option is creating awareness for all the stakeholders in the building design, right from the owners, developer, consultant, contractor. Okay, so we have now, luckily nowadays, all of them working together. Earlier, each one will give the safety percentage of 5%. We end up with the 30% over capacity of the systems, which consumes more energy. Okay, still these practices are going on in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So the overcapacity of the system needs to be addressed by proper educating at the higher level. Okay, and on the service sector, okay, our viewpoint is you can train the technicians very well unless you train them why they are doing that. Okay, we should import them the importance of doing better service on the managing the efficiency and cost viewpoint, so thereby they can do the much better job. Okay, so we have struggled in one aspect bringing students to HVAC sectors in the last 10 years. The students are not turning to these industries. Absolutely. Okay, so they are going to IT and biotechnology, all these industries coming to energy technology, HVAC technology is a big challenge. Okay, so we are trying to overcome this. Luckily, with the help of history, we are trying to fund some of the research projects for the students to come to this industry. So we have to address all these points to make this global National Cooling Action Plan a success. This is my view, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for highlighting the issues. But you bring up an important part of, getting together all stakeholders, especially, building design, building developers and all of that. So let me take that as a segue into inviting Mr. Adil to talk about, while efficient cooling is one part of the cooling solution, how do we also look at innovative ways to reduce cooling demand through, better building design?
I can stand and I can speak. Would that be okay?
Yeah, it's fine. You can come here and address.
Thank you, Terry and Karan. Obviously, it's a very, very important panel, and I would like to start by saying that, and in fact, Mr. Dadewal and Professor, they took my ideas anyway. So let me go slightly beyond this particular aspect. Let's think beyond Carnot.
Absolutely.
That's the key that I want Karan also to note. Let's think beyond Carnot, because Carnot efficiency is something which is, it's strangling. I mean, we are not really thinking of anything else. And in saying this, I would like to highlight one thing which Mr. Dadewal is also promoting, efficient ways of delivering the cooling. So delivery of cooling through a radiant system or through a, air is one of the worst medium of delivering cooling.
Absolutely.
And we really need to, write it down in our action plan. So we need to phase out air in our cooling system. The second point is that as far as, in fact, I have prepared for this multilateral engagement, how we can really do that. So one point that I wanted to actually put forward is, obviously, let's think beyond Carnot. Magnetocaloric chillers are available. I mean, this is a technology which is coming up. We really need to think about those things. Apart from that, I'll just put forward 3 points. As I see it, as far as the policy is concerned, we have various stakeholders who are involved, like designers are there, we have builders and the technicians are there, and then we have users. So a multi-pronged strategy for engaging all of them, and each of them has certain aspect to cater. Very quickly, the designer really needs to know what is the cooling delivery that he is planning. He really needs to understand that the building physics is beyond the aesthetics. Second aspect, which is again which comes with builders and technicians, it starts by saying that the contractors needs to be educated that the air leakage in the building is the primary cause of every inefficiency that we really look into. Training and certification of the people who are installing is something which is very, very important. You touched upon it, sir, already. And one of the very important thing, which again I'll go to Mr. Dadewal on this, performance liability. If you start selling BTUs, you will be efficient. That's what it boils down to. Then the last point, which is the users really need to understand how the comfort is felt, because most of us doesn't know how we react to a certain temperature and humidity. We have an adaptive comfort model which elaborately discuss like how I would feel comfort when I have a BP, how I would be feeling a comfort, and when I'm walking, how I would be feeling the comfort. So understanding of the set point and adaptive comfort are the two things we really need to understand from the users. So 3-pronged strategy: designers needs to be engaged, contractors and building technicians needs to be engaged with their respective areas, and the users needs to be engaged. Thank you. On which I'll just close my discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Adil. That was, I think, really insightful. Gives us a lot of food for thought. But I think a lot of people are talking about, the need for training servicing technicians, and also, some of the standards that we are setting. I had a question for Dr. Walia from class, but I think she had another engagement right now. But let me take this opportunity to invite my colleagues from CEWIC, Shikha and Vaibhav here, to take us through, with all these things around cooling demand and better building design being spoken about, how does that impact, the nature of servicing requirements and training that will come up?
Thank you, Karan. Very good evening to all of you. Thank you for inviting us for this discussion. A lot of discussion in cooling is around technologies, as we know, and that's what CSW has been emphasizing for some time now. Well, so technology is extremely important, but you could have a very efficient technology being installed, but not really used in an efficient way. And that is where we come in, and that is what is really the importance of the servicing sector, and both from the energy efficiency point of view, but also from the direct emissions point of view. It's the servicing practices that really matter in terms of how many times a particular AC is recharged across its lifetime. So these things are extremely important, and in a lot of research that we have done on this particular issue, what we have found is something very interesting. In the servicing sector in India is characterized by what we call as the lemons problem. It's a very interesting sort of problem, which is essentially about information asymmetry. So we've got a huge informal market. So if you look at the servicing technician market in India, is largely informal setup. There is no way for a consumer or customer to know which is a bad technician, which is a good technician, which is essentially an information asymmetry problem, which lowers down the servicing level or the price of service, which ultimately it's a vicious circle. It continues, and you will always have bad or subpar servicing with subpar pricing. So the question is, how do really you sort of break this lemons problem and this information asymmetry problem? And that is what the cooling action plan also emphasizes and looks into. The idea that after a lot of stakeholders discussion we have come forward with is can we have something like a universal certification? Is there a way to completely formalize the market in the long run? Maybe 10 years from now, 15 years from now, can we have all the service technicians which are like universally certified, and this formal setup will be now hopefully will get over the problem of lemons or information asymmetry. And the way we go about doing it is have a very robust certification architecture, which could mean that the government actually certifies the process is very robust, and also there is a training architecture, which so there is all the technicians go through some sort of training. Trainings are still there, but we believe the training architecture has to be much more robust. It delivers actually good training, and which is certified. Yeah. And then ultimately after this, the third leg that we see is also customer awareness. Just because you have a trained technician, see in India, the expanse of the country, the geographical mass of the country, as far as whenever there is a price differential, that as a customer I can have a technician which will be very expensive, which is very good but expensive, but there will be somebody else who will come up, just learn and start servicing at a lower price. Till the time that problem is going to exist, we'll always have this problem of many technicians which are untrained, semi-trained coming into the market. We have to somehow break this problem. And that is why customer awareness is like the third leg of it. So if we have the customers who know what is really the importance of good training, good servicing practices, and they also know, well, there is something like a trained or certified technician in the market who will deliver, even if it is a higher price, but deliver good services, servicing practices. So that is probably the way to go forward. what is the shape or architecture of a training system or a universal certification system is the kind of research that CW is doing now to really better understand what are the alternatives in front of us. But the idea is to formalize the system or servicing sector in the long run and move towards universal certification, training and customer awareness. Thank you.
Vaibhav, thank you very much. I think, so actually, if you would realize, this is my fifth chit that I have received of we'll take those offline. But Vaibhav highlights a very important part of universal certification, global standardization, and how we can start to build comprehensive solutions, and how we should encourage governments around the world for cooling action plans. But having said all of that, I will try to concise it. But at this point in time, I would want to bring in Subhashish from Shakti Foundation, who, with the perspective of, a lot of people have highlighted that we need to overcome the financing hump. And what is the role, and how could institutions and foundations like yours help us overcome that financial hump? Subhashish, if I can request you to keep your intervention to around 3 minutes.
Specifically on Shakti, our foundations and foundations can be only catalysts to innovative ideas, but the crux of the matter lies with the industry and the beneficiaries, and if they connect together properly, that those financial harms can be overcome. Now we have been speaking about cooling for last 1.5 hours, and somehow we had been only speaking on thermal comfort. But when we talk about cooling, it's not only thermal comfort, but we also need to broaden it up and need to speak about other aspects of cooling, like one would be the food, the other is health, where medicines need to be stored, and as we are moving towards e-vehicle, cooling of the battery also comes into play. Now, in terms of how organizations like us or other foundations can help overcome the financial harm, one example which I can draw from the food industry, where there are food FPOs, which are basically farm produce organizations, who are working with both the government machinery as well as with the beneficiaries, who are the farmers, and bringing them together, developing a hub which can be called as a hub of excellence. There are a couple of them in different states. Two names which come readily to my mind. One is the Shahadri Farm Fresh, other is Green Root. So what they have done, we have always seen that providing sustainable cooling in terms of cold chain has been always a challenge because of the cost of developing a robust cold chain mechanism in place. So these organizations, working with the local NGOs, were able to do it because they worked as an integrator at the farm level, which maybe ESL has been successful in getting done when they had gone ahead with the LED programs or the municipal DSM program, where they acted as an aggregator. So might not be a lot of opportunity from the foundations like us, but foundations and organizations who are working at the ground level, they would be able to move it forward. Thank you.
I think Subhashish, you highlight a very important point, that even for a business model to be successful, you need the initial trust from organizations like yours. You start to pilot some of these things, because what you're highlighting essentially is a business model for a cold chain. But having said that, and everybody would have recognized that there are people who are outside the room watching for my life. Let me take it to district cooling, which is now becoming an important part and is also an important section of the cooling action plan, and invite Mr. Michael Rantil to talk briefly on the district cooling initiatives.
Could I have this one? Yeah, or if you want to join us. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. I'm here on behalf of the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency. Myself, I'm from the Swedish Energy Agency. And the Protection Agency have, in cooperation with TERI, carried out a study on district cooling for India, which both reduces leakage of HFC or even totally eliminates the need for HFC, and at the same time drastically reduces the energy need and allow for sustainable power production. And this study is coupled to the Indian Cooling Action Plan. It's, as mentioned before by Mr. Love, a non-in-kind technology. The background for our interest from Sweden is that we have the largest network in the world. Stockholm is the biggest one in the world with some 250 kilometers of pipes for district cooling. By the way, Paris is, I think, second. This system started small. It has expanded organically, and the customers are mostly well-paying offices, public institutions, shopping centers, universities, and so on. But the even more important reason for our interest is that district cooling with the central cooling units is much more energy efficient than having many single standalone units. For example, if instead of using a single cooling unit for a building development of 25 million square meter, you're using a conventional compressor cooling in a district cooling system, you can avoid a power plant of 500 megawatt. So it's really huge energy efficiency gains. But also the leakage of HFC, which is a greenhouse gas, as you know, will be reduced. And also it's important to remember that the use of fluor chemicals not only impact the atmosphere, but their breakdown product, mostly TFA, is also a great concern, or growing concern. But moreover, district cooling is not only more efficient, it also enables alternate cooling technology, not using fluorocarbons, as mentioned before. Instead, absorption technology using heat from sun or from waste, or combined heat and power, which is more efficient, or even free cooling from cold water from lakes can be used. So we have done a preliminary study, and this is finalized, and the next step is under consideration. And in the study, we found that space cooling and the food security sector have been identified as an important one, and we're looking into Punjab and Haryana for this, for continuation of the study. And we don't believe that district cooling is suitable for all areas in India, but certainly it will have a place. That's our understanding. So I hope I'll be able to come back with more news on this. Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, because the next session is going to start, we have more partners here from industry and the laboratories here, but we will have to organize another session sometime later. I have Dr. Dam also, sir. Apologies, but let me thank you all for being here, and for you to provide all these comments. We'll take them back and send you the minutes of the meeting. I would also like to thank my partners, Shakti Foundation, Honeywell India, and NRDC for supporting us in this initiative. Thank you very much.